Hello, everyone. Thank you and welcome to QE Babble. Thanks for joining. My name is Matt. I'm the organizer here, and I'm also a recruiter in the testing quality space. Really appreciate you joining if you're watching live or catching up later. For anyone who hasn't watched any of these sessions before, they aren't webinars, and they're definitely not polished here's the answer sessions either. It's very much a conversation. We're bringing together, or we're trying to bring together different perspectives from the quality engineering industry, challenging some of the norms and assumptions and getting to understand what's really happening in the industry now. So this one's a little bit different because we're not just talking about ideas, we're actually going to demo one today. And the focus is on a tool called the Quality Intelligence Engine, which has been made by someone called Richard Williams, who we're going to introduce in a second. And at a very high level, the QIE analyzes delivery artifacts, things like specifications, ownerships, and governance structures to identify where delivery is structurally at risk. So as we explore the tool, there'll be a few different kind of areas we touch on in terms of how it's built and what assumptions have been made about how or what good delivery looks like. We'll look at where this could actually improve decision making in the real world, so how a tool like this could benefit organizations and teams. And then we'll look more holistically at how AI is starting to evolve the role of a modern quality engineer, something we've touched on about with QE Babble before, but with two brilliant panelists, I'm sure they've got some great insights on that one. So alongside Richard, who's developed the tool, I'm also delighted to say that we're joined by someone who's a very familiar face to many in the industry. That's the CTO of Hive Quality Engineering, Neill McCarthy. So Neill's here to join us and give his view on the tool and add some insights as well. So we'll kick off with a walkthrough. Richard's going to also share a link, hopefully, to register your interest in the tool if it's something that you think you could get some value from. So without further ado, let's bring Richard and Neill in. Hello, both.
Hi, Matt.
Thanks for joining today. Really appreciate it. So we're going to run through and show the tool in a second, but Richard, if I can come to you first, just to briefly introduce yourself and let us know what inspired you to build it in the first place.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and hi, Neil. So Richard Williams, I've been involved in QA and testing for around 25 years now, as Matt's mentioned, I've spent the last 10 months kind of looking at, considering and building this QIE, this Quality Intelligence Engine, as its name evolved. I suppose it's probably worth just highlighting where this came from. So the idea really came from a series of conversations that I've had across a range of engagements, which is around how AI may be utilized and used across QA. And they often, those conversations have a certain aim or intention and end up in the same place. It's almost, how do we go faster? How do we do things cheaper? And often, how do we do the same with fewer people? A lot of the answers were replacing testers, reducing assurance, automating judgment, and that never really sat right with me. So I often thought the real problem isn't necessarily a lack of activity. It's that we're identifying and exposing risk too late when it's expensive, it's political, or it's harder to fix. So I kind of came up with a different idea, which was, what if AI didn't replace the assurance judgment, but what if it scaled it? Because a lot of companies are trying to use AI to automate testing, but fewer are trying to scale assurance judgment. So that's kind of where the idea behind QIE came from, and I'll get more into the tool and how it's useful and what it delivers as we evolve. But yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
Thanks for that. I'm excited to get onto the screen. Neill, great to have you on.
Cheers, Matt. Great to be here. So for those that don't know me, and I've been around for a very long time, about 35 years this year in the testing and quality engineering industry. I'm now CTO of Hive. We're specializing in payments testing. I describe myself as a AI agnostic, and I'm looking for what can be valuable use cases for assisted intelligence in the QE and development lifecycle, and how we can use LLMs, MCPs, and the technology that's an inevitable wave to help us to work smarter. Not, as a lot of CTOs have been looking, as a way of reducing costs and repeating the mistakes of previous generations of automation waves of just cost cutting with straight through processing. So what interested me in what Richard has, it appears to be a smart solution with a meaningful set of outcomes that has a human in the loop that adds value. And that's why I think we're heading for the future. So hence here to be the healthy cynic.
Good, exciting. And yeah, I share your view there on the fact that I think a lot of organizations are looking at AI as immediately a way of driving efficiency and cost cutting and reducing people potentially involved in quality engineering. And I've seen a lot of that. And I think Richard's already made it quite clear in the conversations we're having that this tool isn't about that. It's about adding value in a different way. So let's crack on, Richard. Should we get it up? And do you want to give us a bit of a walkthrough of what the tool looks like and a high level of what it does?
Absolutely, and I think I'll kick off with just a high level summary, and then I'll share my screen to show the type of thing that I'm feeding it, and then we can get into the output, because that's ultimately where the real value is. But as you mentioned before, the QI is an engine. And what it does is it reads delivery artifacts like essentially an experienced QA, and it works to surface delivery risk early, but it's early consistently and at scale. I guess so. In complex terms, in simple terms, it takes a messy, complex requirements, and it turns them into that structured, risk-led assurance view. The sort of thing that can take significant time with experienced QAs to process, review, and read a document. So it's one thing just to clarify, and this is building on what Neill said. I mean, I've always posted about human in the loop and the use of AI to augment and to accelerate and streamline the human, make them more capable, more effective, more valuable to an organization, and absolutely not replace. So this isn't a test case generator. It's not a chatbot. It's absolutely not a replacement for QA engineers, analysts, or any form of assurance lead. It's there to support, enable, and enrich. And it's there to replace time, if nothing else. This takes a document, and I'll share the document that I've been using as one of the example inputs. Just screen share here is not quite like Teams. So here we have the example requirement. So from this, I've scrolled through. So it's a requirement specification that contains what appear to be fairly well structured, considered, and fairly mature requirements. It goes through a whole series of sections where they're clearly labeled. I'm just trying to get to them. So various functional requirements that exist. There's also non-functional requirements that are embedded within the document across a range of tables. There's also requirements embedded within paragraphs. But this is the document that I've used to undertake a whole series of tests. I'm not sure if I'm sharing that. If I'm not, then apologies.
Here we go.
Sorry, Matt.
No worries.
So this was the document I was using. Now this is a fairly modern, a fairly mature requirement specification. I will add that I have used this solution across a whole range of requirements. Some that are kind of older in style and consistency, a lot messier. This is well structured and has a whole raft of clearly articulated requirements. So I've run it against a range of differing inputs, and whilst the content and the structure changes, the quality and the underlying delivery risk signals are still there, and they're still presented in the output. So that's just a flavor of what's being fed into it. Now we just need to change the screens. QIE reads the document. It reads the document, it assesses the input, and then it generates an output which is focused around delivery risk. It reads that 60-page requirement specification in around 3.5 minutes and generates the output that I'm just about to share. So here we have the QIE output. So based on the document input.
Can we just do it? Sorry, can we just do a screen zoom slightly on there?
I can certainly try. Did that help?
A little bit.
Is that any better?
Not massively. Don't worry. Just talk us through it, because we can get all this information out to people who watch afterwards anyway.
So hang on, let me just see if that's any better. There we go. I'm not sure if that's of any use. Apologies if not.
No, it's all
right.
Yeah, it's all good. Go for it, because we can see the menus and stuff. Talk us through what's on here.
Brilliant. So here we have the first page that's presented, which is this exec assistance briefing. This is the point, I think, where the QIE stops becoming that document reader and hopefully becomes that decision support. So it's aiming to answer 3 questions based on the source input, which is, are we ready? Where's the risk? And what should we do next? So the risk posture, which is there at the top, it's basically saying it's a high risk, and that's the engine's synthesis of risk signals across the requirement. It's not like a vibe-based statement. The next to that, we've got confidence, which is low. It doesn't mean it's a low confidence in the project or the team. It's confidence in the deliverability of what's being proposed and the strength and completeness of the evidence in the artifact itself. Release readiness is there again as a direct readiness signal. It's more just as an assurance position. So based on what's been specified within the document, there's material exposures that should be remediated or resolved before you move ahead. It also then articulates a series of release blockers and certain things that may want to be watched. And then it also provides an executive interpretation, which is highlighting where it feels that the exposure is and where it's concentrated. So things to start looking at and consider. There's also a testing strategy implication. So here it's got the, it's not just saying it's high risk, it's also saying that the exposure is concentrated in certain areas. The test strategy element is around, it's not just identifying issues, it's translating them into the assurance posture. So it's saying don't start broad regression for this particular example and hope for the best. It's saying prioritize control, effectiveness, or auditability, any of the high risk workflow validation first. And this differs a bit from kind of a defect list, where it's more testing and assurance strategy implication. We've then got most likely outcomes, which starts to consider what the potential implications and outcomes are should you go ahead. Top drivers in here are around what kinds of risk are shaping the delivery most strongly. The risk summary is just a summary based on the total outputs, it's captured at the very top, how it used to be, 365 for this document, and that's the breakdown of where they sit. And then into the systemic risk patterns. So this is, I think, one of the stronger parts of the output, because this is where it's not necessarily a findings engine, but it's starting to behave like an intelligence aspect. And it's not just telling us individual requirements a week, it's showing some of the repeated structural patterns. And it's showing where weakness and things may exist across the document. So for me, it compresses a huge amount of information from the source document and the document's complexity into an assurance view that I feel a senior person can then digest. And to say it's reviewed the entire document in 3.5 minutes and created that as the output is one of its real real benefits. And where I say that's the acceleration part for the individual. It then moves on, so we go from exec briefing to release blockers, and this here is configurable, but at the moment it's focused on 10 release blockers that it's identified. Quite often 10 is more than enough for any individual or team to be concerned with, and this is looking at some of those gating risks. So this section is looking that, and as we're all aware, not all risk is equal. This is saying if it goes live as currently specified, that delivery is exposed in a way that shouldn't really be treated as routine. And I'm showing one of the ones here, which is around error handling. And it also articulates where in the document that it's identified that risk. And it's starting to say what will happen if it's ignored, where you may see that surface, what it's blocking, what might happen if you progressed anyway, and an explanation as to the confidence around that particular risk. And then it talks around various assurance considerations, so the approach that one might take, the rationale for why that needs to be done, what to clarify, so how to clarify certain things that are affecting that risk to better improve and enhance the source document to ensure it's no longer a problem, and some of the questions that an experienced QA may ask of that particular piece to enhance and improve, and things to consider. So that's the blockers section. From there, we move into risk concentration. And this is less list and more of a view. So it starts to show you how the risk is actually behaving across the artifact. And this is looking at where's risk concentrating. Obviously, not everything carries equal weight. This helps bring things to life and show you it. It's hopefully helping bring that senior attention to the areas that are most likely going to drive any kind of late stage delivery failure. And it's got concentrations by domain, it's got concentration by section, all looking to add and improve and help just help the consumer to apply their human effort into the right sections and the right elements of a document to ensure that it's a quality output that can be taken forward into delivery. And then again, it shows the overall shape of the risk. And then finally, we're into the findings catalog. So the findings catalog, again, is something that I made configurable. I've kept it as a top 50 here, but there's various items where you can select whether you want 1, 50, 100, or the entire law, whatever you deem you want to see. And in here, it then gives you a similar breakdown to what's there in release blockers, but again, more detailed. It gives the drill down. It's not necessarily the executive briefing, which is there for leadership. This is there more for the individuals that can be looking at reviewing, updating, and applying any change to the source document to remove those risks, those issues. And this is a lot of the thinking behind the classification, why QIE flagged it, what it considers a priority, and what the signals are that are driving the judgment. And again, it's got confidence in there, which makes that uncertainty explicit. So rather than it doesn't hide any ambiguity, it tells you exactly why the confidence is lower, whether it's unclear, what the wording missing constraints or any inconsistencies across the specification. And it's got varying amounts of information here, depending on what the requirement is. So the requirement there is a specific requirement that it's flagged within the source document. It provides this narrative, which is where the LLM comes into its own, and that's what's providing a lot more of the explanation, the narrative, and supporting what's being determined within the system. So the system is rules based that analyzes, it takes a source document, it extracts the requirements, it analyzes those requirements based on a set of predefined rules, and then it takes that output and feeds the output that it's determined into an LLM to enrich that for display. It doesn't use the LLM to make that determination. And I think that's a key point that needs to be made here, in that it's not an LLM making this distinction. The distinction's made prior to any kind of AI call. AI just helps bring that position to life. And that's it. And there's also sections in there where you can then download. So these all, I mean, it's nice to have as a browser-based output, but equally, a lot of teams may want to take that away, consume, and look at the various sections. So we have that as a downloadable option where you can either select the exec brief, findings catalog, the full pack, whatever you may want, and that just exports as a docx output. So yeah, that's the whistle stop tour. That's QIE.
Whistle stop. Thank you. You've done that well. That was 10 minutes or 9 minutes, and you've gone through a hell of a lot there. Let's bring this on. So appreciate that. You have a little drink, Neill. What I think I'm right in saying it's not the first time you've seen this, because you've had a bit of a heads up from Richard and you've had a few conversations about this. So just as a general thought, what do you think about what we've just gone through there and what the tool looks like?
Sure, Matt, no problem. So what I've liked from what we've just been describing and showing me is it's a intelligence assisting tool. It's not trying to do it all. There's a basis in there that helps with the ability to control the LLM's non-deterministic nature, because it's controlling the text, where a logical rules-based engine built from experience, and which is experiences and potentially biases from his years in testing of how to review and standardize a document to give you an overview of risk. One of the things I've seen through my time in testing is a lot of good test managers, good test leaders are poor at articulating risk in the language of the business and in a meaningful way to stakeholders where they take action. From the structuring you've done, Richie, it feels like you're trying to get over that barrier by using the LLM to give you a better set of queuing messages to that level. How do you link it going forward to a business outcome and keep calibrating that rules-based engine you've built behind it? How will it learn to move forward?
It's a great question, and I suppose that's so. The evolution of the product is that it can not only read the input, but it can also then digest, consume mitigations and evolution of a product that's in use within a program of change, so that it can consider multiple artifacts and update the output based on multiple inputs. So that is something that's in the pipeline. It's not there yet. It is being developed, but it's not ready for showing. But in terms of it learning, I think that's partly where the human in the loop still remains, because to create something that fully determines that completely autonomous of any human input is quite the challenge. And there's probably a large degree of machine learning that would be required to support that functionality, which this is not. I think this is still that analysis, that human enabler, that augmentation to enable an individual, and still is there to accelerate rather than replace that person. So I think the person's still going to provide a large part of that human intuition, that experience, that capability as part of that wider ecosystem. So yeah, I think it's the learning is also maintaining, managing, and developing the rules to make sure that they remain consistent and are relevant. And I know this is, I suppose, on that point, this is running a somewhat generic rule set. There are separate parameter driven, because I'm not looking to have this determine what industry it's being applied to. The person running the engine can apply that level of determination. So there are, for example, payments. You can feed a payment parameter so that it will take the general rule set, but also then apply payment specific rules to that document so that it can apply that level of specialism to whatever industry that it may be used against. Payments is one example. There's a raft of others, but that's all part of how this is evolving. But for today, it's the general pack that is kind of a catch-all and does a considerable amount, but there are specific industry focus areas that this has been tuned for and can be applied depending on what its use case is.
That's great. One of the other things that you referred to back then as well, which is this domain knowledge and context you're looking to build out. So how are you going to control those different context models? Are you looking at using an MCP for some directions? Do you absorb more information through APIs? Or are you looking to build out a knowledge base per sector and a group that will support that in the wild?
Yeah, so for now, it's been, as I say, fairly human-led rather than anything broader. So I think in time, very much MCP and beyond. But for now, it's been arguably drawing from my experience of working across a range of sectors and building out the appropriate rules and then peer review to ensure that they're fit, appropriate, correctly calibrated, so the right rules are triggering the right responses and the right risk indicators, and that's building out healthcare, government, payments, finance, insurance. There's a raft of rule sections within the model, and it's modular, so you can bolt on, add in as is appropriate, and call what's appropriate and needed depending on what's being run. I've designed it with that as at its core, so that it can be updated, it can be added to, it can be bolted onto.
No, that's great. One of the things there, again, going back to the rules engine, the idea of building out, the documentation you've shown is very deterministic. It's taken from traditional documentation. In early displays, you've shown me as well, you've shown me it absorbing use cases and working from there, user stories, flows. How do you think you will need to adapt and adopt as we move to more agentic driven systems that are non-deterministic, where the means of capturing information and reporting that information is less well known? Because I think we're going to have a real need for AI assisting risk-based models at that point to help us understand what we can cover, when we can cover it, and how best we can capture that information, because we're going to be evolving and moving more towards, again, risk prevention rather than ownership of quality through the life cycle. And if we're not careful, potentially the point of blame again in new silos.
No, absolutely, and it's a very real problem that I think is just across the horizon, if not starting to affect us. I think the key thing there is that I'm not trying to predict what the system would do at runtime. I'm looking at how it's defined, what's expected, what's controlled, what's missing. So I guess even with AI systems, you've still got expectations, constraints, fallback, monitoring. All of that still has to exist. And that's what this is analysing, not necessarily the model behavior itself. So again, I'm not forcing determination onto the system. I'm applying structured thinking to how it's been specified. I don't know if that hopefully answers the question.
No, it does, because I think one of the key things here is about understanding context, understanding system thinking, and how to apply it in a. And I loathe the phrase non-deterministic when aimed at AI. It is determinable. It's just very, very hard to determine at the speed it reacts. But you may know the types of outcomes you want, and that again is where you can drive those rules and risks. And I think that helps as a early check and balance in that modelling, while other people do more detailed modelling around the emergent behaviour of the AI model, both its APIs, MCPs, and the LLM. And as we move more into context, small language models that look at specific elements in much more detail.
I'm just gonna come in. So we've got loads of questions coming in, which is great to see. It's clearly a product that people are intrigued by as a minimum and interested in, I'm sure as well. So this is links into the first question that we had kind of written down to cover, which was what assumptions of good delivery does the tool have? But it's about those rules which you just referred to. You may have kind of broadly answered this, but I'm going to flash it up. This is from someone called Craig, who is watching. It does say LinkedIn user, but I know it's Craig Parmesan. So thanks for watching, Craig, and thanks for the question. Are the predefined rules that the LM uses around the predefined rules that the LM uses to make the decisions, where are they defined? Can they be changed if they do not fit some industries?
So it's a good question. I suppose the one thing that I'll do is just qualify the question ever so slightly. So the rules don't influence the LLM, and the LLM doesn't make the decisions. So the engine itself makes the decisions based on the rules that exist within it. The LLM is then called to enrich the output to create the dashboard view that's then presented. In terms of those rules, they can very much be personalized, they can be evolved, they can be recalibrated depending on industry. They are a modular set of rules that sit within the engine, but they can be called, they can be shared, they can be assessed, they can be extended. So there's processing within the engine that I've created that allows kind of multiple layers of rules. So a high-level summary document may see a lower, broader suite that may be, I'll pick payments because of Neill being here. There may be broader payment specific generic rules that exist across that industry, But when you get into a detailed specification, you need to start looking at some of the ISO implications and how they're being managed and how they're being considered. And when you're into that level, it also then considers the lower level rules. So not only can you calibrate the rules, you can also then have varying levels, or do have varying levels of rules that apply to documents depending on what's being assessed and how it's determined it's being assessed at the time.
Yeah, and I think as I said, you did kind of cover that before, but I thought it was quite important for you to kind of underline the fact that the rules aren't created by the LLM. The LLM's used in the next phase, but the initial part is customizable based on whatever your industry requirement is going to be from the tool, right?
Absolutely. I'd spot another question just happens to be on my screen as well, where it was around, can the output be tuned for a different audience? And whilst I've not shown it today, there is an option for a persona filter. So the actual output that's generated can be tweaked and evolved to change the language being used, the risks being presented, and how that's articulated depending on the persona. So that might be a QA specialist, head of QA, it may be a risk manager, a risk lead, it may be a CTO, CIO, or similar. They can then be selected that changes the output. It doesn't change the risks that are being presented, but it's how that's presented and some of the implications, the wording that exists around there. That's all developable and changeable depending on the audience. So it does have that functionality. It's just not available in this demo version, and it's not something I've shared today.
Okay, let's talk about the second point. Neill, I'll come to you first on this, if I may. So the second question we posed at the start was, where do we see a tool like this actually improving decision making in a real world scenario? So where do you see, Neill, something like this being of benefit?
No problems, Matt. So from my perspective, the ability to have something that speeds up that process with a human in the loop and improves that communication cycle. I say, and Keith Klein cover calls this out often, as has Simon Day many times. One of the challenges we face in the industry is a lot of senior test leaders are not necessarily the best business communicators. And if we can't get our messaging across effectively, we're never going to be effective. And in that situation, that's where CTOs and C-suite execs drive to cut the costs, turn it out quicker, cut the cost, automate more. What I feel with this rules-based engine using the AI to enhance the language, and it'll be interesting to see how it works, Richard, in the future with multi-language, is how to frame things, as Richard was describing with the personas, the same conceptual risks, the same technical risks and outcome for that domain, but articulate them in a way that is effective to different audiences that need to understand and appreciate to be driven to a common outcome and goal. And that's one of the things I think is really powerful, particularly when you look at large government programs, rapid complexity, changing programs, and a lot of platform-based programs where there's a lot of consistency, but we want to white label out different things, and the nuance makes a lot of difference. And how you present that to different stakeholders will impact the effectiveness of testing. So I like the fact that there's something there that says, here's a different way to improve and speed up, but it's being built out with knowledge and context of human in the loop.
Do you want to add anything else to that, Richard, in terms of who you think this is going to benefit?
I think Neill's essentially nailed it. For me, it's well, yeah. I'll have to. I'll keep him on retainer. For me, who it benefits, anybody that is pressed for time. So this is the type of tool that can be used early in a program's lifecycle to do what is often skipped. It's often skipped because people don't have the time. It takes significant effort of experienced people to review documents, to articulate risk, to identify the potential bottlenecks, problems, and challenges. What you've seen in that dashboard, read a 60-page requirement specification, created the output in 3.5 minutes. That just removes the time argument. That gives you the level of output. I don't claim that it's 100% right every single time, in as much as I don't claim I'm 100% right every single time if I was to assess the document, and I don't claim any individual would be. But what I do present is a tool that applies the same rules, and it will assess the document on its merits. It will then enrich the output with an LLM. And I'm touching a little on one of Ashwin's comments that I've seen here in the question, which was around how do we reduce hallucinations and similar, which we've all seen is common of running AI and similar. This doesn't use AI to generate the output. So if I run this same engine across that same document 50 times, I will get the same output 50 times if I don't tweak the rules, change the document, and I'm just assessing it. If I put the same thing into an AI, ChatGPT, Copilot, similar, and run it 50 times, I guarantee I'm not going to get the same output 50 times. It will creep, it will hallucinate, it will evolve. For me, that's the difference. By feeding an AI and an LLM a determined level of risk and asking it to enrich, that's the difference. And that's why it adds the value for the human individual, because it's giving them something that's born of risk within a document, not asking an AI to give its opinion. So anybody, I think, that's there to review a document, a requirement, not even limited to requirements, there's a whole raft of documents this and processes this could support and assist. RFPs is one that I touched on, which is where you can assess the quality of the questions or the deliverability of the output. That's another example. There's many more. But anybody that's working in that where they are pressed for time and need to understand the potential delivery risk is someone that could benefit from using a tool like this.
Very quickly on Ashwin's question. So this tool, from what we've been discussing, which it doesn't take you to the automation level, it gives you a risk framework. But where it looks like putting guardrails in LLMs, one thing I will call out that I've been talking to and seeing recently is the work of Antti Markano in this area, in using test-driven development mechanisms in that AI development pipeline. So those guardrails start getting built in and start getting designed in there. This would give you a view of the risk going in, but that would help then define and manage the automation framework. What I like was this is an individual component of something bigger that can be built out, but it's not trying to drive everything. One of the challenges I'm seeing with AI tooling at the moment is it's trying to be everything to everyone, and that's leading to a lot of abstraction where we can't get clear answers from. So at the moment, I'm still in the point solution space and focusing on outputs and designing and engineering risk mitigation through each of those steps. It may still be mini waterfall, but until we have a better control mechanism, it's one which feels a reasonable place to start.
Okay, let me just bring this one up from Phil. I think it's something we're kind of touching on. Just want to clarify with you on this one, Richard. Assuming this is a SaaS product, will the learnings from client A feed into how the engine will behave for client B, or will it learn at the client level?
So as I sit here today, this isn't a SaaS product as yet. It's intended to become, but that's not quite the product that I've showcased. So it's something that I can run with clients and have, and I can run it either on premise or remotely. In terms of the learnings, that's entirely down to individual organizations. So it can be utilized to build those enhancements, the learnings from client A and support the whole. But equally, if there are certain clients that would not want that, then it can be wholly implemented within a client, and then there's no bleeding of any of kind of learnings from a particular client into anything else. So it can be protected and kept within a client, and it can be shared. But as it stands, it's not currently SaaS, but it will be at a point in time in the future.
Okay, thank you. I just want to clarify something before we carry on, because I've only scheduled 45 minutes for this session, which perhaps now in hindsight I regret slightly, but I want to try and keep to the time, because I appreciate everyone's busy around lunchtime and we'll be working today. So we were going to talk about quite a broad question about how AI starts to evolve the role of modern quality engineer. We won't be able to do it justice in 4 or 5 minutes, nowhere near. So my suggestion is that maybe I'll chat to Neill and Richard afterwards, and we come up with something, and we'll come back to you on that point in some form at some point, because there's too many good questions, to be honest, that are left out there, which I'd rather we try and focus on it in the last couple of minutes or few minutes before we finish. And just if we can, just while maybe Richard thinks about anything else he wants to show in the last couple of minutes before we end. Neill, you've already mentioned you think it's something that's really got legs and can add a lot of value. Do you want to give us like a sort of example use case of where you might want to plug something like this in?
Absolutely. So as saying, I'm looking at point solutions that have immediate value using AI. I'm seeing too many big solutions that take too long to implement and aren't giving meaningful outcomes. One of the key challenges I see, partly in myself, so there may be a level of projection, is effective communication to different audiences. In the world of AI, the demands and stakeholders are getting more complex again. Everybody believes they have ownership and believes they want an outcome. Very few want to own that risk. Having something like this where we can make assessments and communicate the same key messages consistently in the language of the audience to help improve that communication and maintain that communication, because as the program changes and the deliverable changes, we can recalibrate and run again and show what the deltas are. It helps that communication feed and helps improve the vocabulary and effectiveness of testers in that business language. It stops us taking old positions of attack, defend. It starts moving us back into assisting other engineers in a platform engineering practice, which is very much the way AI is going. Think of it like Agile Plus, but we need to be smarter in how we communicate that while still taking a focus on higher quality values and how they can be applied across the whole life cycle of a product that's using AI or is AI based in the first place.
Thanks, Neill. Thanks for your contributions. Really appreciate that. And I like the fact that you've emphasised the word assisting rather than sort of taking over. That was obviously a clear intention there. Thanks. Richard, just take us for the last couple of minutes. Someone asked a question here about, can you show us the executive brief? I don't know whether you want to flash that up for Tony, who asked that question, or is there anything else you want to show us?
There we go. Sorry. So that's the executive assurance briefing. Now that covers the top part. The only bit that's not visible on screen is the section at the bottom, which is covering the systemic risk patterns, which is the section where it's articulated what those risk patterns are, what it's indicating, and then provides a series of examples for within the document that justify or provide things to then go and review as part of where those risk reviews need to happen. So yeah, that's the risk review.
And then, do you want to just give us a heads up on how you want people to sort of register interest or contact you to get further information about this?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. So in terms of if people would like to know more, then feel free. You can reach out directly on LinkedIn. That's an option. There's also a landing page that I've created, which just articulates a little bit more around what QIE is, and also has a register interest section, which once submitted, provide your details, and we can arrange a follow-up session. We can run a personalized demonstration. If you want to share an artifact, we can run your own artifacts through and compare the output. So see how this has generated an output compared to what you may have seen, identified or flagged as a particular delivery risk, and compare. And yeah, feel free to reach out. I know, Matt, I think you've mentioned I think you popped it in one of the QE Babel announcements, so I probably need to just update that as well, and on my profile with a get in touch section as well, which is a link to the landing page.
Yeah. So another thing to recommend is just pop it into the comments as well. So all the people who've watched today who registered for the event will get a notification if the comments are updated. So if you stick the link in the comment section, everyone can pick it up from there, and we'll also add it to a follow-up post that I'll do on this tomorrow. But it was a real whistle-stop tour in 45 minutes. Thanks for putting it all together, because I know quite a lot of thought and care went into making sure you showed the right parts of that. So I appreciate it, and clearly there was a lot of interest from everyone who's watching. So thank you both. Thanks, Neill, for coming on as well. I'm so chuffed you came on a QE Babble finally.
Yeah, I'm glad someone was.
Brilliant.
But yeah, thanks for spending the time. We're going to end the stream there. We'll do the follow-up in a post tomorrow, and then this event will go live on YouTube by tomorrow or Monday as well. And we'll be back next month with some more stuff on QE Babble. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.